So we were on the Sing Off. We won season 3, which means we won a record deal. 2 weeks later, the record company was like, we don't know what to do with you, so we're kind of letting you go. And we were like, okay. I mean, it sucks, but we didn't really have a relationship with them to begin with, so I don't think it really hurt that bad. So we were like, you know what? We're gonna hop on YouTube. We're gonna start making music because we know we're confident enough that we have something special that people respond well to. So we're just gonna try it. And personally at that point, I've always been a head in the clouds type of person, but I was so like, yeah, I mean, I'll do whatever. I'll go with whatever, as long as I don't, I think, have to stay in my hometown and I can keep expanding and having experiences and I can keep working in music. I'll do anything. And I think that naivete that we all really had is what took us to the next level and the next level and the next level, because it was so exciting to us to achieve anything at all. And frankly, for me, it just felt like I was on the ride and it was out of control. but I think I needed that. I think I wasn't supposed to think about it so hard at the time. The next big move was we eventually signed a record deal because our Christmas music was taking off in such a huge way and really touching people's lives in a way that we had never imagined. We signed the record deal with RCA in 2014. 2015, we won our first Grammy. And then, from there, we were just touring the world, making original music. It has been a journey. It's been a journey of ups and downs, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Everyone knows that secret, that it's the same secret everybody has on some level, which is you don't really know me.
Yeah.
But it's even levels and levels and levels and levels of more extreme when we all kind of walk around the elephant in the room, which is that it's not fully accepted.
Yeah, no, exactly. I also feel like we all want to feel love, but we all have to protect ourselves. I think a big thing I've learned in my life is there's so many people in this world, so many, and people that will accept the real you. And so I'm just like, now I just feel like I'm just like opened up completely and I just want to be my most authentic self. And as scary of a leap as that was, I was like, if I get 1 million unfollows on Instagram, I honestly would not mind because I just want to be myself.
That's
and like,
right.
but it's amazing how the second you do that, the opposite of what your fear happens. Like you start to feel comfortable in yourself. You start to have more energy. You start to attract the right people. Pieces start to fall into place. Also, that's not me encouraging anyone to come out before they should. I know there's like a bunch of factors involved, but I'm just saying like the second I was able to really like own who I was, it was just like a relief.
We can make the world a better place and we should make the world a better place. And the number one thing that we need to stop is pessimism. And I say, what are the 7 pillars for a spiritual revolution? And number 1 is foster joy and squash cynicism. That's something that you do, you've done on the show, you've done on this episode, but it's so important. It sounds obvious and kind of like, oh, that's kindergarten or it's Sunday school. No, it's transformative. We can spread joy and we can squash that cynicism in ourselves. If we are pessimistic and cynical, things go on just the way that they've gone on for the last several decades. And in fact, they get worse and worse. The forces of injustice want us to be cynical. They want us to be pessimistic. If we don't bring hope and feel hope and access hope, we can never make change. So I remember I had this acting teacher, this very famous director named Andre Gregory. He was the focus of the movie My Dinner with Andre, which is a classic. The whole movie is a conversation at dinner between 2 people. And he would have tea with his students sometimes, and I had tea with him, and he's like, how are you feeling? And I said, well, I'm feeling kind of pessimistic. I'm feeling kind of down in the gills. I feel like, I don't know if change is possible, and I'm feeling kind of depressed about it. And Kathy, he grabbed my arm hard. he was in his 70s at the time. I think he's in his 90s now. He grabbed my arm hard. He looked in my eyes and he was like, stop it. Don't let yourself do it. Don't feel cynical. If you're pessimistic and cynical, they win. You want them to win? You have to keep hope alive. You have to stay positive. It's your charge. And he really was hurting my arm. I was like, ow. And he sent me out the door with that charge. And I remember I saw things differently after that point.
Why did you find such a love of studying mindfulness and studying flow? And what led you to that?
People are probably familiar with Joseph Campbell and The Power of Myth. And one of the things he says in The Power of Myth is where your pain is where your life is. Mm. And so the hero's journey, it doesn't start with somebody giving you a lottery ticket or saying you just won, book of the week or the megabucks or anything. It usually starts with some adversity and the ability to say yes to the adversity and to learn from it is what it's about. So this is about my journey. It started out with substance abuse and chronic pain, but it was really more about how to, like he said, how to lead a human life in a way where you can experience those moments of being fully alive, just fully engaged, fully deployed, and for the highest good or the greatest good. There's something about, and I was reading it in one of the books. I read a lot of books, and it talked about the altruism. We're wired for that, but there's something. I think it was probably The Art of the Impossible by Stephen Cutler. Something about saying yes to life, and then our latent abilities come out of that need, out of that difficulty, that challenge. And there's something about it when we access it and we realize, oh man, no matter what happens to me, I get to choose my response. I get to decide who I'm going to be, even if I can't control my circumstances, like Viktor Frankl talked about in a concentration camp. But I can control my mind. I can control what I focus on and how I choose to respond to whatever it is. I can respond with grace and dignity and not lose myself, no matter what.
So let's say this happens and you wind up in DC. You have a new bedroom, new front lawn. What would you want to do with that? What would you want to use that platform for?
There are several things, but I did a lot of work in schools and public schools in different communities, and especially underserved communities, and teachers, schools that don't even have working bathrooms, and kids that don't have enough to eat. The only time they eat anything is when they're at school. I just find that to be unacceptable in this country. And I think we just need to stop and look at our students and our teachers and appreciate them and hear them and invest in them.
I feel like this is so big, and I think this is very singular to you. I think you as First Lady, can you believe what we're saying that?
No, it's weird.
It's crazy, but it's real. Like, this is real now. That would be so radical because you grew up similar to one of the kids that you just talked about.
That's true.
People don't know that.
No, I was on free lunch when I was in grade school, and I didn't really know, you don't really know when you're a kid. It's like, I know I'm standing in a different line with a ticket, and I know that the other kids don't have tickets, and so this must be weird. But, that's what we did. And I went through life experiencing public schools, like really not having enough money, summer camp or things like that. Or even if I went on a high school field trip, I had to, work at the school because we couldn't afford to give money for the field trip. So I had to work harder and do stuff to earn it, which was okay. It, like you're saying, it makes you who you are. But I've seen it through a different lens.
Yeah.
But when I say different lens, I think the majority of people have had moments like that. They've had years like that.
That's right.
they've moved through it. But, you know, I don't know one person who has ever said to me, my life has been great.
Yeah.
I never struggled in any way.
That's the secret. We all have the same secret, is that nobody knows how much we're carrying.
Right.
But it is unique in this lane for you to be a person who actually knows what that's like,
Yeah.
right? How many first ladies like could say they didn't know what they would eat?
Right.
They didn't know if there'd be enough in the fridge.
Right.
Yeah. And I think real leadership is, not look at me, but come with me.
Yeah.
And I've
That's
been
right.
there. So empathy is I've been in that well, so I know how to help you. I know your address, right? And it's interesting because there's so much of a focus on Bobby, which there deserves to be because he has so much passion and so much he wants to do. And at the same time, as we're sitting here, I think we're in a chapter where women really are meant to have this space to lead. And I feel like there is so much that you innately know about humans and people, which would make you the most compelling, helpful, important woman leader we've ever had, Cheryl.
Well, let's see what happens in a year and a half.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think that I'm extraordinary. So when I decided in that moment that I had to do something to change my life and decided to go on the hike, I think that spark is inside of all of us.
Yep.
It's not like only special people get to say, hey, you know what? I'm in this rock bottom place and I have the strength and courage to save myself. I think we all do. And I think that that is about really listening deeply to yourself and trusting that inner voice within you. And what happened to me when I started to hike, like there were two planes, right? There was the exterior one where I was like, okay, what have I done? It is really hot and really cold and my pack is really heavy and I don't know how to backpack and I don't know how to use my cook stove. I put the wrong gas into it and oh goodness gracious, my feet hurt. It was all of that, the testing of the body against the world, which is a lot. And I think an important part of a spiritual journey. And then inside of myself, with each of these tests that, you know, I either passed or failed, it didn't matter. I did them. I continued to walk through them. I continued to put one foot in front of the other, even when it hurt. And what I realized is, you know, I had this idea. I mean, certainly when I decided to hike the Pacific Crest Trail, I envisioned it as a spiritual quest, a spiritual journey. And I had this idea of what that would look like. And to me, it seemed a lot of emotional processing. It seemed a lot of kind of crying and contemplating and feeling big things. And I got out there and I was so in my body, Kathy. It was like just everything hurt. Everything was hard. I had to keep hiking. And pretty soon I realized that the body was my teacher. The body was teaching my spirit what it needed to know. And it needed to know that we can continue on even when it hurts, that we do have strength and courage, that when we get really quiet with ourselves, you know, we almost always can find that there's a light within that will guide us forward. And those things accumulated day after day after day after day and mile after mile and breath after breath and step after step. And it changed my life.
Well, what surprised us in studying these lives, the same people over decades, was not that taking care of your physical health was good for you. We know it's good for you. What surprised us was that taking care of your relationship health is really good for you. Not just keeps you happier, but it actually keeps your body healthier, helps you stay disability free longer as you get older, helps you live longer. I mean, we didn't believe it at first, you know, because as researchers, we study, well, how would this work? How could relationships possibly get into your body and shape your health? And it is about stress, and it is about relief from stress. What we see is that good relationships are emotion regulators. They help us return to a kind of equilibrium that we're meant to return to after we're challenged, after we're stressed.
That's beautiful.
But if
I
you
love
don't
that.
have anybody at home or anybody you can call who can do that for you, who can be a good listener when you're stressed, who can give you sound advice, that when you have that person, you can literally feel your body calm down when you can tell someone about a stressful experience. If you don't have that person, then what we think happens is you stay in this kind of chronic fight or flight mode. You stay revved up, and our bodies are not meant to do that.
The key thing is that a lot of things that we want to do are either too meta, like I want to be happy,
Right.
or they're the kind of thing where they're the wrong direction. Like self-care is generally speaking going in the wrong direction is the way that works. And the reason is just because, other care is better than self-care for actually being a happier person. Yeah. So that's the one thing that I recommend that everybody do if you want to feel better today. That's really counterintuitive. It's not trying to solve all the problems in the world, and it's not going in exactly the wrong direction. It's actually figure out something to do that's in just a completely unprovoked kindness for somebody else. Like if you're like bumming at work, you feel like just a drone at work. Like I could just not do this and nobody would even notice. Get up, go get a cup of coffee and bring it to the person in the next cubicle. And this is like your brain is going to work differently, by the way. Your brain is going to work differently as a result of this, but it has cosmic significance to it because remember, this is an ancient Hebrew saying that each person is the whole world. That is remembering that the whole world is in each person, and each, eternity is encapsulated in each moment, and fold everything up into the moment of just unprovoked kindness and love for somebody in that particular moment for no particular reason. And that absurd little act suddenly can be a game changer, and everybody can actually do that, and they can do it in each day as that's, by the way, the ultimate self-care.
I grew up in poverty. Essentially my entire childhood, my family was on public assistance. My father was an alcoholic. He was a binge drinker. And my mother had a stroke when I was a child and was partially paralyzed. She also had a seizure disorder, was chronically depressed, attempted suicide multiple times. We were evicted multiple times. And of course, as you can imagine, this is not the ideal setting for one to succeed in life. Oftentimes, when it was very difficult, let's say if my father came home drunk or my mother was having some issues or they were in an argument, I would get on my bicycle and ride as far and as fast away as I could. And on one of those journeys, I landed at a strip mall and there was a magic shop there. And I had an interest in magic. So I walked in and there was a woman sitting there who had her eyeglasses sort of at the tip of her nose, and she had a chain around the glasses, and she was reading a very thick paperback, and she looked up and greeted me. And I started asking her some questions about magic, and she informed me that this was her son's store, that she was simply minding the store while he ran an errand, and that she knew nothing about sort of the magic in the store. But the interesting thing about her was that she had a radiant smile, one of those smiles that embraces you and makes you feel okay. And that's how I felt talking to her. I felt like for whatever reason that I could trust her, I didn't have to be ashamed. So we began a conversation, and she actually ended up asking me some fairly penetrating questions or deep questions that normally I would not respond to about my background, where I lived, etc. And I was honest with her. And after about 15 or 20 minutes, she said to me, I really like you. I'm here for another 6 weeks. If you'd like, I think I can help you and teach you something. And so what happened is, for the next 6 weeks, I showed up at the magic shop for about an hour and a half or two every day for the next 6 weeks. We spent that time together, and she taught me many, many things.
Every time someone told you to be a good girl, that is not what they meant. And you know that.
because that is redundant. You are good. What they meant was, don't be powerful. Don't have a voice. Don't receive. Be a good girl. Be tameable. How about be powerful? Well, in order to be powerful, you're going to have to come correct with yourself, which means you're going to allow yourself to be rich. You're going to allow yourself to receive all the love in the world, all the self-respect, all the money, all the good friends, or you're not. And every time you see a woman who allows any of that, you're going to praise her. You're going to wish her well, because every time you're triggered by her, what you're saying is, why does she get to do that and I can't? F her. Because you drank the Kool-Aid that you need to be good. You don't need to be good. You are good. You don't need to be good because you are good. That's not up for debate. And so there's no way you won't be good. You need to be in truth. You need to walk with fire. You need to be powerful. You need to be turned on. I'm curious of all the things, because your capacity for understanding is so great. Why did you choose this as such a big lane in your life to work with moms and parents to be conscious? Why is this one of the pieces that you decided to say, I'm putting this in the world? Because you could have gone in a zillion directions. And what do you really want them to get?
Well, precisely because you realized what you did. And I realized this in my years of clinical work and in my own motherhood, how the core for the evolution of the planet is the consciousness of the mother. And I'm not just putting it on the mother, the mother figure. It is the healing for the planet. So when I was doing my work and I was thinking I should write this kind of book and I should do this kind of work, and when I deconstructed it down and I whittled it to what can I focus on that will have literally the key in a seismic, intergalactic way. And it sounds like I'm so pompous, like, oh, I was going to find the key.
No, it doesn't.
I was just trying to break it down for myself. Like, what the fuck is what is the key? What is the key problem here? If I had to break it down to one thing that I could say, let's change this, and it will have a, ripple effect of exponential proportions.
Yeah.
It was this. And the reason it was this was more so because no one was talking about it, because the parent was exempt from examining their ego. The false identification of a parent with their parent identity, you were saying Kathy Heller identity, and the mother identity, that was the core evil in the world. When I say evil, meaning unconsciousness in the world. And that ego was not being talked about at all. And it was that I went for, because I saw it in my own mothering. I was brave enough to see my own ego. And that was the greatest courage I ever had in my life. And that is what I want to give to the world. Because when you see your own ego, your own false identity as a mother, and how because of that false identity, you are creating this child to be in your own making, in your own fantasy, and you are ruining your child's chance at their own destiny, that is the core, quote unquote, evil of the world. Because you abduct your child from their essence, the child grows up to abduct others from their essence. And that's why we abducted the earth from its essence and abducted the animals from their essence. We fucked up the whole world because of that one thing that no one wants to talk about, which is the false identity of the parent, aka their ego. So once I got that, I was like, that's what I want to dedicate my life to. That's it. That I will die okay if I can answer that problem, if I can solve that problem.
I invite you and our community, invitation to close your eyes, clear out your inner space with 5 breaths. I invite you to locate a time where you wanted something so badly. You had done everything. You researched it. You tactically lined it up. It could have been a job, an internship, an admission to a school. It could have been getting him or her or them to say yes, a place to live. You wanted it. That was your red door. A plus B plus C, and 99% in the bag because you've done it all right. And you go right up to your red door, you grab the handle, but it's stuck. And you perhaps can't believe it's stuck because you had done everything right. A plus B plus C, this impasse. You kick the door, it doesn't move, you're angry, maybe depressed, but only because it is stuck, you have no choice. You pivot and you turn 20, 50, 170 degrees, a hairpin turn. And there is a radiant, wide open yellow door. You might have said yellow doors don't exist. You've not heard of yellow doors. You cross the threshold and there is someone more right for you. There is a community where you feel alive and connected. There is a job or an internship that opens up a side of yourself you didn't know you even had. That yellow door led to a land that was not what you had wanted. It was better than what you had wanted and better for you. And as you step back and think about that stuck red door, the hairpin turn leading to the yellow door, there's so much to do with who you are and where you are today. Was there anyone there at the hairpin turn? Maybe at someone you met for 2 minutes on the bus or at a party? Maybe there was someone you'd known for years, a dear friend, a grandparent who shared a story they'd never shared before. Someone pointed the way, gave you information to the yellow door. They were a trail angel helping you along the hairpin turn. And now as you step back, stuck red door, hairpin turn, trail angel to the wide open yellow door that has so much to do with who you are today. How really are the most important parts of our lives formed? Is it narrowly that we are makers of our paths? Is it only through tactics and strategy and goals set based on yesterday's information? Or are we less makers of our paths and at most important moments discoverers of our journey, where we meet people we didn't know existed? Because all the information, what I want on that red door, is only based on today backwards. But the discovery of the yellow door and the synchronicity of the trail angel, that holds information that has yet to unfold before us. And so finally now, as you sit way back, stuck red door, hairpin turn, trail angel, synchronistically in your path, wide open yellow door, where in your ride of life radiates your higher power, God? Is your higher power in the open yellow door and the stuck red door? Is your higher power in the trail angel and your openness to be in dialogue with this great sacred force in us, through us, and among us? And have you been on a spiritual path, a sacred walk all along, in dialogue with our universe? I invite you back.
We just outsource our adequacy. We outsource the knowledge. Somebody else knows better. And this is so crucial, right? The returning to the sanctuary within, the knower that knows, the part of us that's connected to God, the part of us that's connected to the divine answers. How do we walk ourselves back home to that?
Well, let me tell you, to build up to that question. I am so concerned about what we've done to birthing and what we've done to our womanhood by telling ourselves that we have to have someone else deliver our babies. That's wrong. We have completely robbed women of the essence of the very essence of their power, which is birthing a baby. I have to catch myself not to say I delivered such and such a baby. It's the mother's privilege and responsibility, but she's the only one that can do it.
It's so fascinating. You know, when I have 3 daughters, thank God. And when I had my first daughter, I remember having been told by a friend that if you ask the nurse in the labor and delivery room, they can put these bars on the bed that you can hold on to and you can squat. And I remembered when I got into the labor and delivery room and it wasn't coming along quickly. And I said to the nurse, hey, isn't there a way where you can put some bar on this bed so I can actually be in a position to squat? And my husband and the nurse said to me, what are you talking about? Nobody does that. Very few people do that. That takes a tremendous amount of strength. Just go with what we're saying. And I said, no, I want to try it. And sure enough, there I was. The bed kind of moves into this other kind of position so that you're in the bed, but the bed now has like a bottom part and these squat bars go on. And what happened? I delivered the baby because I could do it because I was empowered, because I was on my feet, because I've never felt so strong. I could cry just thinking about it. I named my daughter Gabrielle, which means God is my strength, because I felt stronger than they told me that I was. Yeah. And that experience gave me so much. And I can't believe that I have to ask and beg versus laying backwards in a position where I have no agency over my body. And you're so right. And nobody talks about this.
No. I started medical school in 41 in September, and World War II started in December. All right. All through that, we were learning about birthing babies and so on. But the whole thought form at that time was the basis of what we're still working with. And that was to relieve women of pain during childbirth. It was, this awful amount of anesthesia. I had my first two in that condition. I didn't know that my first son was a boy until 24 hours afterwards. And in medical school, we were taught how to use forceps. Because you see, if the woman is totally anesthetized, she can't push the baby out. So how are you going to get the baby out? Well, I got to be real good at that. I was good. I could even help a mother with an after-coming head. It was a technique that you learned, and it was all on the basis of trying to help the mother so that she didn't have any pain. And nobody thought about anything else but that aspect of it. In fact, in the 70s, I had a young person with me who was from the University of Cincinnati, and we were going to the hospital for her birthing. And on the way home, he said to me, that's the first spontaneous delivery I've seen without forceps. Without forceps in 70s. Now, I had my last two at home, but I created the baby buggy program and a lot of other things. Right now, my vision for the future of my life on this planet, I really, really want to have created a village for living medicine where the people who are there as workers, the people who are there living there, everybody understands the whole concept of we have this power within us. Yeah. But you start out with the birthing, and the birthing has to be a loving birth center, not just a delivery center. We deliver pizzas, we deliver speeches, we don't deliver babies. So it's the loving birth center where the mother can do what she wants to do, what she needs to do.
we don't see because we look on social media. We see the highlight reels of things. We don't see the before. We don't understand what's going on. So we just assume that everybody else has something we don't, and therefore why even try? Because we don't understand what goes into building ourselves into our potential.
Tom Brady allowed me to convince him to not care about what everybody else thought. The coaches don't like me. Tom, I don't care what your coaches think. All I care about is what you think.
Wow, that's so hard.
Tom, I don't care that they don't see you. Do you see you? I don't care that they're only giving you 3 reps. Those 3 reps have to be the most amazing reps anyone could possibly see consistently. And they're going to give you 5. And those 5, bruh, 4 out of 5 got to be spectacular until somebody say, well, we give him 10. And that's what's going to happen to you in your life over and over. All you've got to do is give 100, train yourself to give 100%, 100% of the time at everything you do. Compete at everything, including self-mastery. Learn to master your thoughts. Learn to master and commit to your dreams. Learn to not just dream big, but to believe big in order to become big. So it's so important that people allow themselves the freedom of believing in themselves. Not that they're going to be a mega star, but that they're going to be a star at everything they do. Being a parent, being a friend, being a spouse, being a significant other. I don't care what it is. Okay, so let's be real honest. Wow, that sounds exciting. But can anyone give 100%, 100% of the time? No.
It's a whole new
So what is the
getting
lesson
started.
here?
And I just wanted you to
Default
talk about
mode.
that a little bit in that song
My
and what that means
default
to you. Because I
mode
feel like
is
at
to
this
try
point
to
in
give
life,
100%,
it's like, no,
100% of the
dust off the
time.
shoes.
And
Like,
before then,
there's a lot to
if I
get
was
started
off,
with.
I
And I
was
feel
off,
like
I was
people
like
think
giving
that that's kind of
30%.
passed them by. So
Well, I was
tell
off
us about that
on a
song
good
and how
day. I
that
might
might
get
give us a little bit
60%.
of momentum.
But if my default mode,
I love
the
that.
way I
I
see
love the way you
myself, if my
described it.
mindset,
Yeah,
if my
the song
attitude is
getting
to
started,
give my
most
best
songs kind of
every
start,
chance
they
I
start
get,
with a
my
blank
worst
page.
day
In a way,
is
they
going to be
start
better
in
than the average
doubt.
person's
They
best
start
day.
in kind of a nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And there has to be a certain amount of you that believes in something to make it become something. And to be 8 albums in, to be mid-40s, to be chasing dance music, there's every now and then it's really easy to say, this is ridiculous. You know, who am I? How can I do this? Blah, blah, blah. So there's a good amount of doubt that comes in with it. So the work in writing this song was overcoming those doubts and understanding like there's still so much that I've yet to experience that I know I can, because I've done this before. I've done it again and again and again. I know I can do it again, and I know I can do it anew. It was mostly for me the age thing. You know, I'll tell you this. And it's something I don't usually talk about. But my marriage didn't survive from the dream that it once was, and that was probably tied up in going all the way back to my parents' divorce. You know, I spent my whole life chasing what my parents didn't have. You know, I'm gonna have it. You watch me. I'm gonna get it. And so I went about that with maybe misguided intentions or something. So when I got into the marriage, it was like, it felt like a trophy, but it didn't feel like it was fully realized, the partnership.
Yeah.
And had a lot of regrets, had a lot of embarrassment. I still feel like I'm asking forgiveness for the error that I made in judgment, right? And looking back at, you know, my partnership, it's like, oh, this person was so great. Had I just had a little more therapy or consciousness prior to the marriage, then we probably would have ended up being, you know, business partners or colleagues and stayed together forever in that capacity, but because I was really driving the marriage thing hard, it kind of derailed our truth, maybe. So that's a big secret behind this record is being okay with that, being on the other side of a divorce and starting over, like, what am I doing now? And there's a lot of freedom in it because I'm not seeking relationship for the first time in my life. I'm not seeking someone else to validate me I'm not seeking a partner to show the world that I'm lovable or that I can be love in my personal life. It was scary at first.
I can't even imagine. Ooh.
But I feel really fulfilled, and I still feel whole and complete, which I love. So getting started, that's the real answer to that song is I'm starting over in a way, or maybe I'm not starting over. Maybe I'm just starting for the first time. Maybe I'm not redoing anything. I'm taking off, and in that I get to discover so many things about myself that have always been hidden from my view. Wow. I grew up in a community that wasn't very open to the LGBTQ community, and so therefore I hid any type of attraction. I hid any type of bi-curiousness. I just hid all that, suppressed it, and that wouldn't be revealed until much later in my life. And that's part of getting started. It's like, where am I going next? Who am I? What capacity do I really have to love? So.
Oh my gosh.
Then if I look at my career that's all love-based, a lot of it is really trying to find answers for myself. It's like, who am I in love? And some of it might be overcompensating for love that's still lacking in my life, but some of it is just trying to hopefully fill in the blanks. But I'm okay with it where it's at now, and I'm just getting started. So I feel brand new.
I'm going to tell you something right now that might change your life. And here it is. You can have everything you want as long as you're willing to give up the belief that you can't have it. You can have anything you want, but you've got to be willing to let go of the belief that you can't have it. Everything is energy, my friends. Everything is consciousness. And when you really look at it, there are only two choices. You are either receptive and you are allowing, or you're in resistance. And if you have a desire and you allow yourself to have it, you'll have it. But if you have a desire and you have a ton of resistance towards it, you will not have it.
I've given some thought to what I'm going to say when I'm asked about the connections between the time that I write about with this book and what's going on now. And I think what I would say is, if you are Jewish, then, and even if you're not, you are probably familiar with the phrase never again. And it was born out of the Holocaust, and spoken and promised and uttered on the lips of the children and of the grandchildren and of the great-grandchildren of the people who survived that awful time, to try to ensure that it would never, ever happen again. And if my story coming out at this time gets some attention because of what's going on, if only for the fact that they can read in this book how everything was normal and how a city that had a majority Jewish population, just like Israel has a majority Jewish population, nonetheless was wiped out in a matter of months because of lies that people believed on the outside and a force that rallied around those lies and became evil, then I will have done my small part to try to keep that phrase, never again, on the lips of people at a time when most of the survivors of that last time are dying or gone. That's the thing that I worry about. If I'm granted by God enough time to live on this earth as, another 20 years or whatever, I'll be living at a time when no one will be left who actually can remember what really took place during the Holocaust and during World War II. And when no one's around to actually remember, it's very easy to start rewriting history. There's some rewriting of history that's going on right now in the Mideast conversations, and that stuff is even more recent. No, that's not really what happened. That's not really the way it was. That's not really. So when no one is around to say, no, I was there, and here's how it was, it's very easy for people to say, oh, the Holocaust was exaggerated. That wasn't a systemic murder of Jews. It was a war. It was things happened in war. Whatever excuses are made. So I hope that this story, in its own way, shows the consequences of forgetting and shows the consequences of lying, because we can do neither when it comes to that period of time. There was nothing like it in the history of the world, but October 7th had elements of what it was like. And, not on that scale, but that the sheer cold-blooded, don't care if it's women, children, babies, doesn't matter. We're terror coming in, and the only reason is because you are of a certain religion. That has eerily similar overtones to what took place on a daily basis in the concentration camps and in the attacking of towns that led to those concentration camps. So we're already living proof that never again doesn't always mean that it's impossible for it to happen. Yeah. So that's what I hope. If people ask me, well, your book, whether you intended it to be or not, which I didn't intend it to be, but it's timely. What's the connection? There's your connection. Read what happened and don't let it happen again.
I was a stay-at-home mom who was drowning in debt and brokenness. We were losing everything that we had, including the house that our business is now in right now today. Mm. And there are many days that we don't have lights. Mm. And there are many days that we don't have water because we couldn't afford it. And this is a recession. This is 2008. We don't have any money. We don't have any credit. And I hear this man on the radio say you could get out of debt by having a bake sale or a garage sale. Problem is, I can't have a garage sale because I moved to Nashville selling everything that I had to get here. And then when we got to Nashville, the thing that we came to Nashville for fell through as soon as we got here. So we needed those tools that we sold to get here. Now, what are we supposed to do? When we find this house, we start living here to raise our family here, but we start becoming known in the neighborhood because we have a whole bunch of kids. And the neighborhood loves our kids, and they don't know that we've been living in this house a lot of times without electricity. And my neighbor knocks on the door. I have been practicing this thing that Dave Ramsey was saying that you could do, have a bake sale to get out of debt. I had called my grandmother on the phone, who was my favorite baker, and she said, why are you trying to do this in the kitchen? You don't even like to be in there. And I said, because of the man on the radio. And so she says, okay, open up your hand. Get this much flour. Get this much salt. Like, she begins to shout out ingredients. And all of a sudden, 17 years before, what didn't make sense in college when I was studying to be a doctor, all of a sudden made sense in my kitchen. And what I couldn't apply to the human body, I can now totally see it making sense in the kitchen. And so I started making these scientific reactions that I call cupcakes. And I started going out into my neighborhood and sharing them with people to see if they thought it was good. And as they would take down one house, they would put up 15. And so I would see real estate agents coming. I would say, my family says, good, will you taste it? And they'd offer me money on the street. And I realized I had something that could save me. Oh. And my neighbor, when she knocked on the door, she asked me to make cupcakes for all of her clients for the season. This was going to be 600 cupcakes. But I had been sitting in the back of my house with no electricity in the dark. And I had just realized I only had $5 left and I hadn't saved anything for the kids to eat for the week. She sees the perplexity on my face and says, okay, listen, when you make some, I'll pay you some. And so I'm like, okay, so I give you cupcakes, you give me money. Every time she says yes. And so I say, okay, and I close the door and I immediately have this come to Jesus moment talk with God. God, why would you give me this opportunity to make cupcakes right now when I have no electricity, I have no money to take it, And God said, but I feed birds and they don't toil or store up in barns. How much more will I give you who looks like me? And for the flowers that are here today and gone tomorrow, Solomon in all of his splendor wasn't even clothed like one of them. And I heard that in my spirit. And I said, okay, God. And I walked to the Kroger just a couple blocks down the street. And I bought everything that I could buy with that $5. And I turned it into 60 that day. Because she did like she said that she would. And, you know, sometimes it requires that we trust people where we can't trace them. And I turned $60 into $600 by the end of the week. And it's been that same money that I've been flipping for the last 17 years.
Oh.
I built this business with no debt. I built it with no experience in the business. I built it with no knowledge of the product. And I built it losing the house that the bakery exists in right now today. I own that house. And I've been able to set up a trust fund for my grandchildren to be able to have it upon my transition from here to there. And I'm so proud of what we've been able to do as a family, me and my children, when we were supposed to drown, when we were supposed to be left behind, when we were supposed to be continuing to live in lack and to continue to want. God said no.
When you're an artist, you hear a bunch of compliments and it makes you excited. You hear one negative thing and it devastates you. And also it was kind of the beginning of message boards. There wasn't social media yet, but there was chat rooms and all that stuff. So the online sort of opinions was circulating already. So I think I got very like shell shocked by the adulation / she's not really that good or whatever it was that maybe a small percentage of people would say. And that's, again, you know, to each his own with music, right? But I think that really made me like not sure about myself for about 5 minutes. And then I kind of regrouped. We went into the studio and I realized that it didn't really matter. No matter what I'm going to do is going to be good or bad to some people. So I have to love it. And that's really all that matters. And that's art. I mean, that's really the lesson with making art, I think, any kind of art, unless you're being hired to do something for someone else. You have to love it yourself. Otherwise the criticisms will either be more hurtful or ring true, or, you know, you can't predict what is going to be a success anymore or ever. So you just have to make what you love. And
Absolutely.
So that's what I've done. And that's what I did for the second record. And that's what I've always done.
The Gift of Nothing. Tell us about that book and what did the readers really take away from that? What does that even mean? I love that title, The Gift of Nothing. What does that mean?
That's my first children's book. And it was actually based on a 2-week story I did in Mutz. And it was a simple story of it was the holiday season and Mooch wanted to give Earl, his best friend, a gift. But, you know, Earl's the dog and Mooch he had a bowl and he had a Chewy toy and he had a bed. So what else? He had everything. There was nothing else to get him. And then he said, well, if he has everything, I'll get him nothing. And in the book, he searches to like, where do you find nothing in this crazy world where there's so many somethings? He couldn't find nothing anywhere until he finally went on his cat bed and got quiet and kind of did a meditation and started purring and realized he found nothing. And then he put it in a box and put a bow around it. So he gives Earl this box at the holiday, and Earl opens it up and said, "There's nothing here." And Mooch says, "Nothing but me." And then the two of them hug. And it's, I think it was a good gift at the holiday season where we, you know, it's all about consuming, but it's really about giving to each other.
My God, I'm like totally weeping. It's it's so beautiful. You know, it's like, what do people want from you? Your presence, your attention.
Yeah, that's the best gift you could give. And, you know, I had the pleasure to do a children's musical of it at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. It was directed by another great director named Aaron Posner. And what was fun is, like, in talking to the director, it was important to me that at some point in the play where Mooch gets on his bed to meditate and find nothing, that we were going to have a minute of silence. And he was like, you can't do a minute of silence in a kid's
that's a
play.
long time. Yeah.
But we did it, and the actor was so good. He wanted the kids to join him to find nothing. And I mean, this was for like 5 and 6-year-olds. So during the whole play, it was just pandemonium. But in that 30 seconds minute, they all really did get quiet. It was amazing. At one performance, a kid stood up and screamed, "I found nothing." So that was a fun play to do.
My dad, about 2 weeks before he died, he gave me a book, and it was a book by Camus, and it was called The Plague. And it was about a city in North Africa that's unnamed, that is being ravaged by an unnamed illness that they don't know, that they don't understand. It's about a doctor and how he relates to it. And he's torn because they don't know how to treat it, and they know that it's contagious, so that if you have contact with somebody who has it, you're highly likely to die. Very, very high infection fatality rate. And that the only way to stay safe is to stay locked up. And he spends a lot, about the first half of the book is him having a conversation in his head that, his job and his mission in life is to treat people who are ill. And yet there's nothing he can really do to help anybody. He doesn't know what it is. And, he's very likely to die if he goes out and does his profession. But he has this debate with himself. And in the end, he goes out and, and he consoles people. And that act, that sacrifice that he makes of doing his duty brings order to the chaos and meaning to this very, very chaotic universe. And, he said, my father, when he handed me this book, he gave it to me with this particular intensity, because a lot of times he'd give me books to read, but he gave me this and he said, I want you to read this. And he said it very, very directly. So in the years after he died, I read that book 2 or 3 times trying to decipher exactly what it was that he gave me. I feel like I know what that is now. And Camus was an existentialist, and he was kind of a legatee of the Stoics, which were, the Greek and to some extent Roman ideology. And the big hero of the Stoics was Sisyphus. And Sisyphus did an act that caused him to be cursed by the gods to push a stone up the hill for all of eternity. And he would get it to the top of the hill, but he'd never be able to get it over, and it would always roll back on him. And then he'd have to walk down, and oftentimes injured, etc., and do it again. But in the minds of the Stoic, Sisyphus was a happy man because he put his shoulder to the wheel. He knew what his duty was, and he did it. And that is kind of how we contribute to the order of the universe. And, a lot of people have said to me, that because I had, from taking positions that I did on the medical freedom issues, that I've suffered a lot, the loss of a lot of friendships, of family members, of income, of status, of my capacity to, these political relationships that I'd easily made over all of my life, and I've lost almost all of them, and all of these things. And that people say, oh, that's, that's very hard on you. And I feel like, no, that's not hard on me. It's a privilege to have something that, a duty that I'm supposed to do. And what I try to do, the way that I try to live my life, is I never make predictions, and I try to have no expectations, because if you don't have expectations, you never get disappointed. And the only thing that I have control over is my own conduct, is this little piece of real estate inside my own shoes. And, I have to get up every morning and say, reporting for duty, sir, and then go out and, push the rock up the hill. And whether I get it over there or not is irrelevant. Whether I win the presidency or not is ultimately irrelevant. It's not, I only have control over what I do on a day-to-day basis. The outcomes are all in God's hands. And I have to have faith in that. But I can feel peaceful and content within myself, which is ultimately the objective, as long as I continue to be of service and just keep doing the next right thing.
You may know the metaphor of the hell realm in Tibetan Buddhism of the hungry ghosts. These this is LA. This is Western consumer culture, basically, and it's a hell realm with these beings with godlike powers and vast appetites represented by enormous bellies, but their capacity to satisfy their appetites are through the pinhole of a mouth. Ding, ding, ding. That's it. Most people in the West who are chasing experiences of one kind or another, they don't take in the good along the way. They don't internalize it. It's a hell realm, or at least purgatory. It's not good, right? And it drives the consumerism that's burning our planet up and trashing our resources and just trashing the resources, the endowment of the planet that we should steward for generations to come, right? So one, take in the good along the way, slow it down, let it land when you actually accomplish something, feel it for 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds in a row, maybe longer if you like, before you race on to the next thing. So you've instead of feeling like you're always running on empty and you're hungry and you need the next thing, instead feed yourself, let it land. And then if you think about the Buddhist teaching, since you've gone there, the second noble truth, craving. Craving is a drive state based on something missing or something wrong. Yeah. But instead, if you're aware of the fullness and the balance in the present, you don't have to be driven by craving. Instead, you can be motivated by what the Buddha laid out as healthy desire. Technically a different word, like wanting children to be fed, wanting a podcast to flourish, wanting to get I like your sweater, like that's a really cool sweater, wanting a cool sweater, it's okay. In other words, they're wholesome desires. And as we slow down to taking the good, we build up strengths inside that make us even more effective at fulfilling our dreams. So for me, the sweet spot, I call it aspiration without attachment. In other words, where you're going for it full on, but you find a way to be peaceful with the results no matter what, and without getting hijacked by an invasive sense of stressful drivenness along the way.
I wasn't a CEO. I wasn't a startup founder. I wasn't a founder. I was an eBay seller. Like I was selling some stuff on eBay. I had to give it a name, right? You have to make an account. So I called it Nasty Gal Vintage and took all the photos, wrote all the descriptions, as any eBay seller does, not that special, small bootstrap business. And it became a business because I was so curious and just started putting one foot in front of the other. And the first year sold $75,000 worth of vintage. Second year, $250K. And around then is when halfway through that year, I left and launched my website, left eBay, nastygalvintage.com. Year after that was 1.1 million. And at this point, I'm not just selling vintage. I'm going to trade shows and I'm curating brands based on what my audience gave me indications that they loved. So I knew I was able to kind of test my audience with one-off pieces and then understand her and what it was that she wanted to wear. So it was 1.1, then 6.5 million. And by 2011, we were doing 12 million in revenue with no debt, no investors, no loans, no friends and family, like startup money. I literally just flipped clothes. And then investors came in and they put $50 million, $60 million into the business. And that's kind of where the story that everyone else is, that's when I kind of got thrust into the spotlight as this poster child of entrepreneurship. It's exhausting to say out loud. And I'm like, what? All that happened? So they injected $60 million into the business. We said, okay, these were all people with more experience. I'd hired chief operating officer and had really experienced investors, some of the best in Silicon Valley. And we were great. So we're growing really fast. We're going to do 28 million this next year. By the time they invested, that was the expectation. And then the year after that, we're just going to do 100 million. And so we took that, $60 million in venture capital and hired 100 people in a year and moved into more warehouse space, because I had outgrown every office and warehouse I had been in. They were so fast up until that point. So we were like, okay, we have to sign a longer lease now. Let's get a big space and a big warehouse in Kentucky and hire a guy from Zappos to run fulfillment and all this stuff. And we eventually hit 100 million in revenue, but it took a couple years and it cost us a lot of money to get there. And that's a huge accomplishment, but I didn't understand like that a company could lose money and still operate. At that point, I had not really understood finance. I didn't know how to read a profit and loss statement or a balance sheet. And by the time things got really complex, I didn't even have like a foundational knowledge because I was running on intuition and wit and like common sense, and a financial kind of statement was so complex. By the time we got that big, that understanding how to manage the business like that became really challenging. During that time, when we were doing around 100 million in revenue, I wrote a book called Girl Boss. I did not anticipate it to become what it did. It spent 18 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list. It sold 500,000 copies.
It's so much. It's a lot.
Netflix made a series out of it called Girl Boss, and there's someone playing a girl named Sophia, starting a company called Nasty Gal. Charlize Theron produced it. That was a trip. And in 2016, I left Nasty Gal. It fell apart for a lot of reasons. There's no single kind of like what happened. It doesn't happen overnight that a company falls apart. We were overvalued. So they had said in 2012, when we were on our way to 28 million in revenue, that we were worth $350 million. So for anyone else to come in and invest after that, the expectation from our investors was that those people were going to pay more money, and not 400 million, but $1 billion, right? They want to multiply their money. They don't want like incremental markups.
Yep.
So that was one of the challenges, but I was a really young, naive founder who had literally never worked in an office before, had no model for what leadership looked like, was trying to learn on the fly as I was building this rocket ship. And I can learn really quickly, but the learning curve for this was like steeper than my ability to learn and adapt.
You said something beautiful before. You said love the other person into life. That's a beautiful sentence. I deeply agree with this, is that our openness and our own healing. And sometimes we need spaces for healing because we're really hurt, and we need some time that is safe, that we can restore enough to be able to provide that love that you were talking about. But I agree also with you that I see this also in our community. When people wake up to a certain extent, then unconscious people are the ones that are more bothersome than conscious people. And even if there's a truth to that, it's also part of the pitfall of our spiritual practice. This started already when I was working for the Red Cross. I'm a very big fan of contributing to our society and giving something.
Right.
And being part of a collective repair process, like the Jewish tradition speaks about the individual tikkun, like our individual repair, and it speaks about the collective tikkun. And so the collective repair that we are all part of needs us. And relationships have such a healing power. When you look at what's relating, I feel you and I feel how you feel me. So I feel you feeling me is the basic building block how nervous systems constantly feel. As you said, we are wired to relate as mammals. We are wired to relate. And the whole attachment process of children is being felt.
Yeah.
And the more parents can feel their kids, and the more we are in relation with our kids, the more the attachment process will work well. I sometimes bring an example. I say, okay, when my daughter comes to me and says, Daddy, I'm scared. And then I can either say, oh, don't be scared. There is nothing dangerous in the house. So what did I do? I devalued my daughter's emotion. I said, don't be scared, but she is scared already. When I tell her don't be, it is not helpful. And then I give her an intellectual answer when she actually has an emotional request. The other option would be, I turn to her and say, yes, I feel you're scared. Come to me.
Mm-hmm.
I create an emotional resonance with her. She feels felt by me. I respect her fear, which doesn't devalue her fear. I create a resonance with her nervous system, with the fear. That helps her to downregulate. And then I can say, okay, let's have a look what happened.
Yeah.
So then I bring leadership into the situation, but not before I felt her emotional space.
Exactly.
And that creates a whole different experience for her of, oh, when I'm afraid, I can connect to my parents and later on to friends and colleagues, and there will always be somebody that can be there for me when I need somebody. That's part of life. And then it creates a feeling in her, oh, I feel safe. The world's safe. And when I'm scared, I can share it. It's no big issue. And I think if we create more collective systems, and I think also we are facing collective issues like climate change, we have to work differently together globally. And that is a collective process. So what you said about we need communities, I think that's the future of healing and restoration and global collaboration happen through collective spaces. We have to have them.
I can't stand seeing women spend year after year and they're not visible. We have a world to save. We need women with checkbooks. Where's the execution? We just talk a lot about how we want to see things change. What are you doing in your own life? Where's your offer? You should have it written to yourself as a note, as a promise, that come January, there is a way for people to pay you for what you do every single day. It's enough with volunteering and doing all the extra stuff at the church and at the school, and then you feel depleted and you don't have a way to underwrite something that you care about. That has to change. That has to change. There are women in countries that don't even have the freedom to even think about that as a choice. And on their behalf, you should be doing that.